game live on Twitch from scratch. This is the second version of the intro because Windows Update decided to interrupt the first version. So, as I mentioned on Twitter, I've gotten some requests to share the source to the game and the tool with folks, and while I don't have a problem with that as a whole, as a general idea, I do have a slight issue with it from the perspective of use for other projects, beyond just kind of learning from it and seeing it directly. And also, the potential for someone to try and use it to, build a version of the game outside of the project, and not to be too, tinfoil hat about it and be paranoid. But basically, I am putting a lot of time and effort into doing this and streaming it live so people can see. And so I don't necessarily want to just kind of hand out all the source. So my thinking is the following. What I'd like to do is give private access to a GitHub repo that is a read-only access to people for both the core code and the asset tool, not giving out the assets that I am using and will be using. Not that many of them are worth anything asset-wise, because they're all kind of lousy. But I was thinking more along the lines of kind of doing the same thing, Handmade Hero did, because it worked well for them, and certainly who am I to fly in the face of something that's worked. So my thinking is that if you would like to get the source, what I am going to do is, I don't know how exactly yet, I'm going to put together essentially a pre-order for the game. And while the ROM only pre-order that will eventually happen will be for $10 for the ROM, the pre-order for this will be $15. Will give you access to the source code in a read-only repo. And also, if you sign up to do this, you will get access to when the time comes, when the game is done and ready to start, shipping essentially. You will get access to purchase a I don't know what I want to call it. Maybe like a not a prototype, not like a dev kit, but like, I don't know, some sort of limited version that people who backed the source code pre-order will have access to purchase. There will be just a certain number of those, and then the rest of the game cartridges, for those who want cartridges, there'll be sort of the standard thing that everybody does, where there's a limited number of some sort of special edition cartridge that has a different shell. I'm thinking we'll do that and maybe have the cartridge be signed by the people who worked on it. I'm not sure if that'll be a possible thing. I gotta come again. This is all a little bit sort of still a little bit vague, but the idea, the core idea is fixed. And then there will be a standard gray cartridge with manual and box, or just a cartridge separate without the manual and box. At whatever the sort of going rate for those things will be, and depending on what I think the demand for the game will be. So essentially like a development pre-order, slightly more expensive than just a ROM only order, will give you the read-only access and the opportunity to get, sort of like the dev kit cut of the game, that would be separate from whatever goes up onto Kickstarter. So I'll be working out those details over the next week or two to get that online, hopefully before MagFest. As I mentioned at the end of the last stream, I'll be at MagFest in January of next year, which is really only 2 weeks away. So if you're going to be at MagFest, I'll be hanging around with all the cool kids in the homebrew area, and checking out what people are selling, and just trying to see what cool panels are going to be going on. So definitely feel free to say hi if you see me there. I am usually pretty nice. No, I would love to hear what you think. As I had mentioned in another stream, somebody who got in touch with me when I was in Chicago wanted to meet up and chat, and he gave me some feedback about the stream, and I think they were, it was good feedback, and sometimes it's easier to give that kind of feedback in person when you're talking to the person that you're giving the feedback to. So, anyway, hopefully I'll see some people there that are watching the stream. But enough of that. Like I said, I'll keep you posted, and I'll put the announcement to that to what I just said onto Twitter once I'm done with the stream for tonight, so that there's a sort of a record of that for people who didn't catch the stream yet, or the recording of the stream, I should say. All right, onward to coding then. So last time, what we had done is we had gotten it so that we were able to take the data about our sprites and record that information into a JSON file with the information that we were manually manipulating in the asset tool previously, and put that into a file format that we could import through the asset tool, so that as we're converting step by step through the process of PNG to sprite to exported map and content for the game, we have the ability to not have to manipulate those pieces separately within the user interface every time. We still have the ability to do that in the user interface, but we've added, for sprites at least, the ability to export this data in this format, so that we can then re-import it later as we go from PNG to sprite to game data. So one thing we didn't do last time is we didn't make the animation functionality work. We had imported, I believe, the isAnimated flag. Let's see, where is that? So we imported that it is animated, but we never actually got the data about the animation frame size. So we need to add that in here, right? So is animated. So if it's animated, then the frame size has to be imported. So similar to what we were doing here with the collision points and whatnot, and the bounding boxes, we need to do the same thing here. So we need to get the property index for the frame size. And one thing I will say, I mean, I'm not sure what people's opinions on the idea of the sort of dev pre-order is. I'm not going to be putting, ads on the recordings, and the ads that show in Twitch I don't have any control over, but I'm not going to, take subscriptions and stuff like that. So, this is going to continue to just go on as it has. The main point for the source code is that needs to basically have some value to people in order to, kind of maintain it for the duration of the project, and also, like I said, I'm putting in a lot of time, and I'm going to be putting in some money, more so than I already have, in terms of not just the equipment but the the content creation. So I think that I'm not being super unreasonable about what I'm asking for here. Alright, so we've got our frame size, and if it's not an object, we want to return, and obviously we still need to do better error handling, which we will get to at some point. And then, just like we were doing here, we say get property value as, now those frame size are probably uint8 as well, but we'll find out in a second as we work through this. So sprite frame width. So that is a uint8, so that's good. And then that's the frame height. I guess we could probably call that just width and height to make it more consistent, because it's not really an X and, I mean, you could do it that way, but not hard to change. That's that, and then we should probably fix the player one then too. Although it doesn't actually have that, so never mind. Okay. When we generate the file, though, is animated. Where's that export code? There it is. Alright, let's just rename it to width and height also. Okay, so now let's try this one and see. Let's see what happens when we attempt to do that. Project. Oh, why did this get shrunken down? Or maybe I did that because the font was so huge it was ridiculous. I don't know. Shouldn't have done that. But here, there we go. Shooter. Oh, actually, I'm going to run it from here. I need to run it from here instead. Debugging. So let's do PNG to sprite, project shooter, assets, PNG, explode. I believe that's the right path. Should be explode.png, but we'll get to that in a second. Explode.png, and then we need the JSON file too, so that we get our metadata about it. JSON, okay. And let's just double check this. What happened there? Are we getting to this? Target metadata is explode. Oh, it's not saying it. It's animated. Why is that? This actually should be this, so it's wrong anyway. Tokens index, collision point, collision points. Let's see what I missed here. Okay, so property name is animated. Wonder if it's just because it's mistranslating. Yeah, so okay, yeah, so it's trying to take it and turn it into true into an integer, which that doesn't work. So I think I did write that. Okay. Okay, so is animated. Now that was because is animated is an unsigned character as Boolean. So let's see. If I'm going to be consistent about that, I can just say that it's this and then just make it this or that. Right? That should fix the problem. Yep. Okay, so now it's going to get the frame size. The index should be an object. We're going to increment to the next thing, and we're going to get the width, which it did not get. Why is that? So tokens index oh, maybe I was right the first time. Maybe because it's an object already, I don't need to do that. Because it's not like it's an embedded object in there, it's just the properties. Okay. Yeah, that was it. Okay. So now that's good. Export that, and then we should be able to view it in the asset tool just the way it is. It should be condensed down into the 16 by 16. But it is not. Why? I also don't see is animated as a checkbox anywhere. So I don't know that we actually tested this part of anything with the sort of sweeping change we did to the what's it called, to the asset tool. Let's see. So is it actually calling that? It doesn't look like it. Why not? The action is view sprite. It's calling this, right? Oh, it's because... Right, so this shouldn't be happening in there, should it? This is all sort of drawing logic. And this is selection handling logic. Okay, let's move that. Because this drawing logic has to happen separate from the selection stuff. So if we are here and we're drawing, and then we want to do that, where if sprite is selected, then we get the animation state and we draw the checkbox, and if the checkbox is checked, it or unchecked, it flips the state of the checkbox. So this is left offset. Oh, wait a minute. No, because it's at the, sorry, that stays where it is. That's that's in the corner there, in the bottom right corner, not a left offset thing. All right, so now, okay, so at least that part's working. I thought, it's funny, I thought okay, well, doesn't matter what I thought. So if it's animated, oh, that's the problem. Okay, if it's animated, it's got to change the way the image width and height is represented. Okay. I forgot about this. So we had done this change a while back, but basically what it is that if you have the sprite animated, it should only show the first frame. Eventually we will make it so you can step through the frames, but the idea was that, yeah, so it should look like that, and then if I turn it off, the whole thing is rendered, so there we go. So, okay, so the sprite representation there is good. About the only thing that's wrong is the order of the colors. So let's save that. And then we should be able to export it again and test it. And see what new fun challenge we've created here with exporting the animation. And what we'll be able to see is in the sprite rendering code that it generates, did it actually understand it enough or correctly so that it would generate the animation frame countdown. Draw entities, there it is. So let's see. Yes, it did. So it's got the frames of animation. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and build that and give it a shot. So, like I've talked about a little bit, I'm getting to the point where I have a more solid idea, I think, of how I want the game to play. I have some ideas about the I'm gonna speed this up because there's no, you know what, let me rather than do that, let me update the map to have a collision block early on so we can always test that easily, just have it sort of out of the way. So yeah, so I've had some ideas about how I want this to play and sort of the general design of the game. We'll be, I think, getting into that soon. After we can get some more of the ship graphic stuff into the game. I suspect that that's going to create some fun challenges that we haven't accounted for, like with the way that the sprite palette loading is working, for example. And I suspect that once we start using the backgrounds, the real backgrounds that I showed you guys last time, that we will see also some problems with the way that we're dealing with palettes, and we'll have to become a little bit smarter about how we're managing palettes for the meta tiles, so that either we limit the palettes that we can use, or we just use palettes that are changeable within a frame so that they don't mess with the currently displayed background content. Alright, so we should get our bumper block up here in a moment, maybe. Unless I messed up and didn't export it into the right place. I thought I did. What happened? What happened, tiled? I thought you exported it. Alright, it's there. So export. map1.json in assets. Save. Yes. Okay. And then the export of the game should have regenerated the map. did I forget to build it after I replaced the files? This is again why I kind of just want something to handle this part for me, just so I don't even have to think about it. It just happens. You could even take it a step further and go even crazier. There it is, and do something like every time you push a change to the repo, it rebuilds the game automatically. Don't know that I want to go that route. Yeah, the animation worked. The collision worked. The enemies are still showing up, so it's kind of cool. I'm just rewinding here. I want to just see. Should probably put, I think the collision point on the bumper is in a spot where it sort of, you can fly into it a little bit, which is okay. I mean, again, this is not final artwork by any means, but I just want to confirm that that's actually working before we move on to the next thing, meta-tile. Yeah, so this is the collidable part, and so the ship collision the points will allow you to get to the point where the front of the ship kind of looks like it's almost over, well, it is overlapping before you hit an actual collision, so that's fine. Okay, cool, so that's good. So then we're in a pretty good situation there. Now, what I wanted to do is figure out how we can get that player sprite that we were looking at Monday. Wrong folder. Into something that we can use. Alright, so this was the latest stuff, and let me go back to the ship. None of this is necessarily, final or anything, but the ship is good enough that I want to use this, because it's certainly better than what I have made. So... And then we haven't even taken into account that when you turn, you can see the center portion of this, the top part of the sprite stays the same, while these portions of the body change to give the sense of rotation. And I love the detail here with the tail of the ship, where you can see it looks almost like a tail fin on the ship as it rotates because of the way that the outline was done. It just, I think that looks really good for such a small sprite. All right, but right now our current player sprite is, here, let's get rid of this. Our current player sprite is just the 2x2 set of tiles. And we need to change that. So let's open this up. So one of the things that I said I wanted to do was create something like this called Meta-sprite, and have it be something like we say ship top.sprite, ship bottom.sprite. So basically we're saying we have one thing, we're going to call it player, because that'll replace this player sprite, which we can comment out. Now the challenge here is that I have not really thought a whole lot about how to do this in a reasonable way. The idea would be that the ship top is one 8x8, right? And then the bottom is two 8x8s, 8 pixels by 8 pixels, giving us a total of 3 sprites that are offset from each other. And this will be palette, we'll call it palette A, and these will be palette B. And I guess let's talk about how we would do that first just in regular code. Well, you know what? Hey, let's maybe that's what we do. Let's load it up into regular code and change the draw entities to use those sprites, and then we figure out, okay, how do we turn that into something that we can generate from the asset tool? That might work better. So we still want to keep this just for the sake of the game is looking for that thing called player right now, or the asset tool. Well, the game is too. It's going to generate an entity called player. So PNG, and we'll say ship top.sprite, and let's just get this content loaded into the game first, right? Where's the asset tool? We can build this in release mode, and then get the binary into the asset tool, the shooter folder. Okay. So we want to do PNG to sprite, shooter, assets, PNG, ship top.png. We don't have any metadata for it yet, so we should just be able to do that and then look at that and make sure that that looks okay. There it is, and that actually generated in the right order too, so that's great. And then we would want to add the collision point there. Why isn't it? That's weird. There's some sort of weird bug with the collision point setup, but let's just leave that there, and let's do sprite to, what did I call it? Metadata MD maybe. I don't remember. Sprite to MD. Oh, sprite to JSON. That's right. So we'll generate our output there. And then let's go back into that folder, and we have our thing here, and that's obviously wrong. We've got all those extra points, so gotta fix that. Wow. Oh. Okay, that's not right, but we'll look at that another time because I'm more curious about how we're gonna kind of solve the sprite problem right now. So let's just say it's at 4.0, and then let's recreate the sprite now with that metadata file. And we should be able to view it. And we should see the collision point. It's weird. It seems like it's generating the collision, an extra collision point every time I turn it on. Okay, so there is that one there in the center where it should be. So other than that weird collision point thing, we're actually in decent shape there. And now I think I didn't do that. I think I only took, well, let's see. The ship top, ship body I called it. So let's call it ship bottom. Let's just make sure that that looks okay. Right, and we had made that ugly color the background. So let's save that, and then we'll export the JSON for that. And that should have, yep, that has no collision points. And what we'll do is, I don't remember, what does that look like in terms of the positioning? So this would be 1, 7, right? So we have 1, 7, and so that's 6. That'll be 15, 14. 15, 14, 13, 7. So let's regenerate that with the metadata. View the collision points, and it's weird. They looked right at first. I thought I saw it. And we crashed. That's bizarre. I gotta fix the animated checkbox there. They are at the right place. Okay. Weird. I don't know why that crash occurred. We'll have to spend a little time debugging that problem. So now if I re-export it, we should just get those same collision points we had before. That's so bizarre. I don't know. It's like it's picking up a whole bunch of additional collision points from the mouse moving on it, maybe? I wonder if that's what the problem is. We may have to fix this tonight because it's annoying, to say the least. All right, so let's. That clearly didn't work the way that I wanted. All right, well, let's leave it for now, just for the sake of making sure that we can load these into our char ROM. And then we can change the draw routine for the player to use those tiles instead of the ones that we're using for player right now. Okay. So let's see how this goes. Shouldn't have changed anything noticeable about the game, but we should see now if we go into the debugger, should see in the char viewer. Yep, there they are. Cool. So there's the top and there's the bottom. Let's see. Let's make sure the enemies still load properly. Let's continue the debugger so I can. Oops, I'm slowing down instead of speeding up. Yep, those look good. Okay, cool. All right. Maybe we'll get sound effects one of these days, right? Cool. So that did what it was supposed to. So now let's change the drawing routine. So right now what it's doing is if it's looking at the type of entity and it's saying, okay, if it's... Oh, so this is handy. So it's looking at the entity and saying, okay, if it's a player, then go to draw player sprite. Otherwise, go to the next unnamed label. Ship top and ship bottom are already in here. So basically what the code would have to do is instead of generating this, it's sort of like it would have to do that. And then draw ship top sprite would then call draw ship bottom sprite to kind of keep it modular. And about the only thing that doesn't work here is the positioning. So if we run this, what we should see now is that the player is now both the top and bottom sprites, but not positioned correctly, which is actually easier than I thought, or that was an easier change than I thought it would be. So the question is, how do we make the tool do that? Okay, so that's kind of cool. All right, so and of course the collision is still based on the original player collision points, but we'll fix that too. So now what we have to do is we have to understand how to offset this top sprite from the top left corner. And so we don't have to do anything with the Y, but the X needs to be offset by 4, I believe is what we would need to do. So now this should load the top. Yep, it's centered. And then the bottom, it would be the Y that would have to be altered. So the Y is currently going to need to do clear carry, add carry 8 to go get pushed to the next line. Same thing here. And then we have our new sprite. And obviously it doesn't have the animation set up. So we have to figure out how that's going to work. But that is it. And of course the palette is wrong. Most likely because we have too many palettes now. Too many palettes. Because let's see, it's doing if I reverse this, my suspicion is that it will make the bottom palette correct, but the top palette will no longer be right. Export. And it's because it's doing, you know, a naive load of the palettes into the PPU at load up. It's not trying to understand. Oh, damn it. I replaced. Can I just undo that? Will that bring me back? I think that brought back what I wanted. Oh, it offset some things. But it did do... That's pretty funny. Okay, we'll just... I'll just fix it in the regenerated code. It did do what I wanted, but... Alright, so let's see. So instead of going to player... We're going to jump to sprite bottom, the ship bottom, and then we're going to jump to the draw ship bottom sprite, and then just continue on. So this needs to, so here's the bottom, this just needs to push down by 8. And here is the top, which just needs to move over to the right by 4. Add carry 4. Rebuild that. And there's our ship. Yeah. Okay, so it is just as simple as that. That the it's because the palettes are loaded in order, and so because I am literally just loading them right up, the color is wrong. But that is not, that's not too bad. So the question is then, how do we make that change to the representation in our file format? There's something still so satisfying about blowing that ship up. I try not to curse on the stream, although if you meet me in person, I can't promise that I will have as clean a vocabulary as I have on stream. That was just an accidental slip up. So let's see. So we want to basically say, all right, we have a Meta-sprite, which is the player, called player, and it's got a ship top. It's using ship top.sprite. Maybe it's just simple offsets. So we say X, Y offset. And the same thing with this, 0, 8. I don't know if that's going to be sufficient. I mean, it's sufficient for this case. And it doesn't solve the palette problem, but one thing at a time. So Meta-sprites. My sprite, X offset, Y offset. All right. And I suppose I probably want to keep these as something that you have to define here, because we have that working, there's really no need to sort of redefine. Although I guess it doesn't really matter. We could say, okay, if you're referencing it in the Meta-sprite, then it gets added to the list just like these individual sprites. But there's a separate piece of data about how these are handled, something to that effect. And then we want to kind of take this out. Well, you know what? I don't want to take it out yet. I think that looks okay. I mean, we'll mess around with it and see. So here's where here's where things are gonna get messy. So if we encounter Meta-sprite, assume we're just doing the same sort of thing here. So we want to get the file path and get the name of the thing, and then we want to define it as a Meta-sprite, which is not a type that exists currently. So that's there now. I'm wondering if this is... Do we need to give it a name? I guess so. I guess we need to give it a name because that's going to define the entity similar to how we're doing it for here. So maybe we can get rid of this. It's just not a file. I'm not sure how I want to define this. Or am I overthinking this and I should just keep it the way it is? And nope. Someone just came home. Scared the hell out of me. Am I overthinking this and I should just keep them as individual sprites and have some way of just changing the draw routine? I mean, that's effectively what I'm trying to do here, with the idea that there would be some potential to expand it down the road if we decided that we needed the Meta-sprites to do more than just combine individual sprite content. Let me look back at our code here for the drawing. I mean, that part is actually the simple part. Or simple-ish part. I'm not sure. And the way that this is currently working is it's essentially relying on this file list. And the fact that it's being pointed out that it is a sprite to determine how to treat it in the process of generating the output. The Meta-sprite itself is not a file. It's a conceptual thing. There's really no way to so I guess there are a lot of problems with what I'm trying to do here. The first being, like, if this were an enemy, how would I have placed this on the map, right? So right now, the enemies are in this object layer, and we have objects. They don't have any names, but they're here, and they are, you know, these flyby things that I've placed onto the object layer, and they get pulled into the map of the game from this, because we look at the enemies layer and we see there are two objects, and then we find the objects as they are defined here, which then of course correlate to these the flyby PNG, and they are separately. Where did I export those? Oh, okay. They're separately. Okay, because they're tile sets within tiled. They're separately exported here, and really the only thing I care about is I think the size and the PNG. I don't even know if I care about the size, because I think I'm using the image to determine the size, and that will probably have to change too at some point. But so if I wanted to compose a larger object of sprites that are, or an enemy that is consisting of multiple sprites like this, basically what I would do is I would just make a larger sprite. And that works if they're all the same palette, but because they may not be, then it would have to be something that is composited, like what we're talking about here. But maybe we don't care. Maybe is there a better way to do this where we don't care about the fact about how the hardware handles it, and instead we define it based on our content, and then define around it how that sprite should handle the export process? Maybe that's a better way to do it, because splitting up the content like this into multiple pieces actually, I think, creates maybe more problems than it solves. Like, on the one hand, yeah, it's handy that it's separated like this by palette, but for the artist it becomes more problem to, if he has to split the content up, that's going to be a real pain. It would be better to do something like be able to take this and make this the sprite, and have information about how we process the sprite. Let me think about this for a second, because right now it's also reducing the color count down. Like, if let's even look at that. Can I select that? I'm not very good with a sprite yet, so I'm just messing things up. Select. How do I do this? How do I just select a thing? what is the shortcut for that? M. Oh, okay, the marquee tool, right. All right, so let's create a new 16 by 16. Paste the ship in. Let's zoom in. And let's make the background. Well, first of all, let's change the palette to the NES palette. Where is that? I was just messing with this. Loads a generalized palette. There is a, there's like plugins or something unintuitive like that. Normal, edit palette, palette size. No. Options, presets. Oh, that works. Except that it also broke the colors. That's okay. Let's fix that. I don't know why it didn't translate that correctly, but whatever. That's fine. Okay, so now we have our 16 by 16. Shift it over. That is shifted over. Okay, great. So let's save that as a PNG. So let's see, new ship. Okay, that loaded. So let's export that now. Okay, so that created our sprite file. And it lost a bunch of the color because oh, well, let me choose a different background color that will actually differentiate here a little bit. All right, that didn't do anything. Boo. Sprite, color mode, index, more options. I thought there was a way. You could change. No. All right. I don't know enough about how this works. I thought there was a way you could make it so that it would handle the reduction in the palette size automatically, but it doesn't look like it. So let's help it along. Let's just reduce some colors here. See if that works now. All right, what is this doing now? Why is this being difficult? Oh, is it because of Wonder if that's because it is the palette size is throwing it for a loop. I don't know. This is where something like Photoshop, while it is way more complicated, a lot of times can be helpful. Because I can make it reduce the color count properly for me. Okay, so let's reduce the size of this because that's insane. What are you selecting right now? Oh, it's not the... I thought it was the magic wand tool. Tolerance 0, please. Oops. And get rid of anti-aliasing. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to this, and then I want to export this as a PNG. I believe it will give me some options when I actually do. Actually, no, it won't because it's the quick export. PNG. Where are my color options? Nowhere. Okay, so mode. Oh, because it's not even an indexed mode. Okay, so let's try now. No. Somehow this is easier to use. All right, so there are 4 colors. Save. Okay, so this should work because it's actually indexed. I guess there's a problem with the way that it's handling it right now. Okay. So ideally what we would want to be able to do is import this thing with all of the colors as it is in a sprite. If we go back to that for the side-by-side here. I think what I would like to do, ideally, is to just be able to take this and turn it into something that we can represent and have it show that it's 2 palettes. And because it's 2 palettes, that we know that there are going to be different sprites, or have it... Again, maybe it's not so intelligent that it understands how to do this automatically, but we can configure that and then put that as part of our metadata. Because the more I think about doing this as multiple separate files, the more I don't like that idea. I'm almost more interested in keeping it like this. And then in here, having something where we say, okay, sprite position just as a, for example, have one at 4, 0. We just define the offsets of the sprites from the top left corner like that, like we were doing in the code. And then the only other part of this that needs to be defined is the palette functionality, right? Where we say something like palettes and then it's just maybe for every sprite position there's a palette entry, so it's 0, 1, 1 like that. So it would be something like sprite 0, sprite 1, sprite 2. So this is plus x plus 4, y plus 8, y plus 8. Oh, this should be x plus 8 also. The only sort of goofy thing about this is that what we were doing before was we were automatically determining this just based on the fixed size. Actually, that's okay. So what we were doing before was we were saying, okay, if it's a factor of or if it's divisible by 8, we would auto-generate 4 sprites, right? So just to sort of visualize what I'm talking about, this actually seems like maybe this makes more sense. So what we were doing before is we were saying, okay, if you are an image that's 16 by 16, then you automatically get divided up into a 2 by 2 sprite matrix, which is 4 total sprites. And if you remember the original ship that I created, it is actually symmetrical. And so, if we, damn it, Windows. I'm not sure which is worse here. All right, so it's symmetrical, right? Like I designed it so that it's horizontally symmetrical. But this doesn't understand how to do that. So what we could do is for like the player, we could even say, if we were using the old ship before, what we can do now is we can say it's 0, 0, 0, and then 8. Basically, right now, what we're doing is we're calculating this, but we could have this be metadata that's stored off about the sprite, including, you know, we could say, okay, and these are all palette 0, and these are relative palettes, right? Because this is the palette based on it's not actually palette 0 that the PPU has loaded. It's palette 0 based on whatever palette has the sprites colors loaded into it at that time. And then we could even have something where we say something like flags, right? Well, actually, this is a little that. Hold on a second. I'm just thinking about this for a second. Yeah, as long as you're not trying to do, as long as we don't want to do something like a little bit more kind of crazy where we say, okay, we've got this sprite sheet and it's got this piece here and this piece here and this piece here, and what we want to do is we want to define them and then bring them all in together like this, which I don't know that we want to do, where then we have this one object that's the pieces kind of shifted in together. As long as we're dealing with one piece in a single PNG, we could handle either case. And the only thing that I was going to add was that we can then also define, you know, is in here we could say, you know, we could define that it is actually the same tile as 0, as this sprite 0 here, just horizontally flipped. I'm not sure how we would represent that, but I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to go there yet. So I think that's what we want to, I think that's what I want to do. I think what I want to do is I want to make it so that given a PNG file, we can in the asset tool, we can understand that a sprite, an image may have more than one palette that it has to use to represent it. We will obviously create an error if it's more than 4 palettes. We additionally have to, here, so let's write this down. So limitations of the sprite position and palettes array, sprite position, yeah. 1, can't define more than 4 palettes. 2, position offset positions are relative to top left corner position of sprite. That may change. This may change to a center position, maybe, if we decide we want to do that for some reason, but hopefully not. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't do that now. It's actually relatively simple. We could define the offsets as being negative from the center, but I don't think we want to do that. And then, let's see, what else? And then ultimately, and then we need to, in an asset tool, it should understand if we have too many palettes in use, depending on number of sprites that may be on screen at a given time. I'm writing these down in here because I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. But I think this is a better approach than my original Meta-sprite idea, just because I think this is actually going to be less complicated to handle overall. It's a lot simpler in some ways, many ways, but we'll see. We'll start implementing that on the next stream and go from there. So As I mentioned in Monday's stream, there will be no stream next Monday because that is Christmas Eve. Um, I will be doing a stream on Thursday of next week, but I will keep you guys posted. And then the following week it's Christmas. It's New Year's Eve on Monday, and then Thursday I'll be at Magfest. So the next couple of weeks are probably going to be a little bit iffy for streaming. I really want to get to this part, so if I can stream on Thursday and just do like a sort of mega stream of 3 hours or something and get that taken care of, that would be pretty excellent to get that done and working. But we will see how that goes. So as always, thank you for watching. If you would like to reach out to me, I am at Clairvis on Twitter. I am Zelius on Discord for Nintendo Age, zelius@gmail.com. You can also post questions to the YouTube video in the comments section. Comments, questions, ideas. I will keep you posted on how I'm going to move forward with the development pre-order that I talked about at the beginning of the stream, so that I can open that up and then start giving people access to this stuff. That will mean that at the end of most streams, I will likely stop recording and then go through the process of committing the changes for the day so that everybody has the latest changes pushed up at that given time so that they can look at it. And yeah, so thanks for watching. See you next week on Thursday. If you celebrate Christmas, have a Merry Christmas and have a great weekend. All right, take care.